Ich denke, das Überraschendste, was dieses Wochenende ans Licht kam, war das von Meryl Streep. Sie und ihr langjähriger Ehemann Don Gummer sind seit 45 Jahren verheiratet. Und dieses Wochenende wurde bekannt, dass sie sich tatsächlich getrennt haben.
Over the weekend, fans around the world were stunned by news that few saw coming. After more than 4 decades together, Meryl Streep and her longtime husband Don Gummer quietly went their separate ways, ending what many believed was one of Hollywood's most enduring marriages. Married for 45 years, their relationship had always felt steady, private, and untouched by the chaos that often surrounds celebrity couples. That's why the revelation landed with such surprise. This wasn't a sudden fallout or a dramatic moment fueled by conflict. It was a slow, thoughtful shift that had been unfolding quietly for years, completely away from public view. While speculation immediately filled the air, the real story behind their separation turned out to be far more nuanced, emotional, and human than any headline could capture. From the beginning, Meryl and Don built a bond rooted in balance and mutual respect. She was rising into one of the most celebrated performers of her generation, while he carved out a meaningful career as a sculptor, respected deeply within the art world. Despite living vastly different professional lives, they managed to create a home that stayed grounded, choosing privacy over publicity and substance over spectacle. They raised 4 children together and made intentional decisions to keep their family life protected from constant attention. Even as Meryl's career soared to remarkable heights with awards, acclaim, and global recognition, she consistently spoke about how essential her family was to her sense of fulfillment. Fame, to her, was never the center of her world. Love, stability, and connection were. Over time, however, even the strongest partnerships evolve. Their separation was not abrupt or fueled by resentment. It was a gradual change marked by understanding and compassion. Though they had grown apart romantically, they remained deeply connected through shared history, mutual care, and their children. For years, the public remained unaware. Meryl even continued wearing her wedding ring during public appearances, which only added to the confusion when rumors began circulating. It wasn't until much later that her representatives confirmed what had already been quietly true for some time. The announcement came shortly after they marked their 45th anniversary, a detail that made the moment even more reflective and complex. It revealed a relationship that didn't end in anger but transitioned with grace. Balancing a life of global recognition with family commitments was never easy. Meryl herself once described marriage and parenthood as a constant negotiation filled with compromise, humor, and patience. She spoke openly about the challenge of giving her whole heart to both her work and her children, admitting that while her career brought praise, motherhood brought fulfillment on a deeper level. Don, more reserved by nature, supported her journey while maintaining his own creative path. Yet the demands of travel, long projects, and living in separate professional worlds can slowly create distance, even when love and respect remain intact. Their story reflects a reality many couples face, only magnified by public life. There was also the lasting emotional imprint of Meryl's earlier relationship with actor John Cazale, a connection that deeply shaped her understanding of love and loss. His passing years before her marriage to Don left an impression that never fully faded. While Meryl and Don built a strong life together, it's natural that such a profound earlier bond became part of her emotional landscape. Love doesn't disappear simply because life moves forward, and that complexity often shapes the way people connect, grow, and change over time. Today, both continue forward with dignity. Meryl remains as passionate about storytelling as ever, taking on roles that showcase her depth, warmth, and remarkable range, including her recent work on a popular mystery comedy series. Don continues to live more quietly, focused on his art and creative expression, away from the spotlight that never truly interested him. Though no longer married, the foundation they built together doesn't vanish. Their shared memories, family, and mutual respect ensure that their connection endures in a different form. Their story is not one of scandal or heartbreak, but of evolution, honesty, and choosing growth with kindness. It's a reminder that even long-lasting love can change shape, and that endings don't always mean failure. Sometimes, they simply mean understanding. What are your thoughts on their separation? Do you think it was shaped by the pressures of fame, personal history, or just the natural passage of time? Share your thoughts, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Hollywood's most quietly powerful relationships, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. As the news continued to ripple through Hollywood and beyond, many began looking back at Meryl Streep's life not just as a celebrated performer, but as a woman who consistently chose intention over spectacle. For decades, she managed something few ever do, building a career that reached extraordinary heights while maintaining a deeply private personal life. That balance did not come by accident. It was the result of constant effort, thoughtful choices, and a clear understanding of what truly mattered to her. While many assumed her marriage to Don Gummer was untouched by the pressures of public life, the truth is more layered, more human, and far more relatable than any sudden headline suggested. Meryl never chased attention outside of her work. She rarely spoke about her personal life unless asked directly, and even then, her answers were measured, warm, and protective. She understood early on that visibility comes with a cost, and she was determined that her family would not pay that price. Don shared that mindset. As someone who valued solitude, creativity, and focus, he was never interested in becoming part of the celebrity ecosystem. Their shared desire for privacy became one of the pillars of their relationship, allowing them to exist outside the constant noise that often surrounds high-profile figures. Yet time has a way of reshaping even the strongest foundations. As the years passed, their lives began moving in quieter, separate rhythms. There was no dramatic shift, no singular moment where everything changed. Instead, there was distance that grew gradually, the kind that forms when two people continue caring deeply for one another but find themselves evolving in different directions. This kind of separation is often harder than a sudden break, because it involves reflection, acceptance, and the courage to acknowledge that love can change without disappearing. What made their separation particularly striking was how long they managed to keep it private. In an era where personal details are often shared instantly, Meryl and Don chose restraint. They continued to support each other from a distance, honoring what they had built together while allowing space for personal growth. This approach confused many observers, especially when Meryl appeared publicly wearing her wedding ring long after the separation had already begun. To some, it seemed contradictory. To others, it felt deeply symbolic. The ring was not a statement about marital status, but a reflection of respect, history, and gratitude for a life shared. As fans revisited Meryl's interviews over the years, many noticed a consistent theme. She often spoke about relationships as living things, something that requires patience, flexibility, and humor. She never framed marriage as a perfect structure, but as an ongoing conversation. She once joked that longevity in partnership required generosity of spirit and the ability to let small things go. These insights, spoken years before the separation became public, now feel less like casual remarks and more like quiet truths shaped by experience. Her dedication to her children remained unwavering throughout every stage of her life. She often described parenthood as the most demanding role she ever took on, far more challenging than any character she portrayed on screen. Unlike acting, motherhood came without applause or recognition, yet she described it as deeply fulfilling. Don shared in that commitment, and together they raised their children with a strong sense of normalcy despite their unusual circumstances. Even as adults, their children have largely stayed out of the spotlight, a testament to the environment Meryl and Don worked so hard to create. The demands of Meryl's career were relentless. Roles required long periods away from home, international travel, and emotional immersion. While she thrived creatively, the toll of constantly shifting schedules and public obligations was real. Don's life, by contrast, revolved around long stretches of focus and solitude, essential for his work as an artist. Neither path was wrong, but over time, the contrast between them became more pronounced. This difference did not erase affection, but it may have softened the closeness they once shared. Another layer often discussed quietly is the emotional depth Meryl carries from earlier chapters of her life. Her relationship with John Cazale left a lasting impression, shaping how she understood connection, vulnerability, and loss. That experience did not overshadow her marriage to Don, but it became part of her emotional history, influencing the way she approached love with honesty and awareness. Life rarely offers clean chapters. Instead, experiences overlap, inform one another, and shape how people grow. As the separation became public knowledge, reactions varied. Some expressed surprise, others sadness, and many admiration for how the situation was handled. There was no public conflict, no blame, no attempt to control the narrative. Instead, there was clarity and calm. The confirmation emphasized that Meryl and Don still cared deeply for one another and would always remain connected through their family. This approach stood in stark contrast to the way many high-profile separations unfold, reinforcing the idea that dignity is a choice. Professionally, Meryl showed no signs of slowing down. Her recent performances demonstrated the same curiosity and emotional depth that defined her work decades earlier. She continues to choose roles that challenge her and resonate with audiences, proving that longevity in the industry is possible without reinvention driven by desperation. Her presence on screen remains grounded, thoughtful, and deeply human, qualities that mirror how she has handled her personal life. Don, meanwhile, has continued his artistic journey with quiet consistency. His work speaks for itself, existing outside trends and public validation. He has always preferred substance over attention, and his life after the separation reflects that same philosophy. While Meryl's name will always be widely recognized, Don's impact lives in physical spaces, installations, and pieces that invite reflection rather than headlines. What their story ultimately reveals is not the end of a marriage, but the evolution of two individuals who chose respect over resentment. Long relationships do not fail simply because they end. Sometimes they succeed because they allow people to grow honestly, even when that growth leads them apart. Meryl and Don's decision to part ways privately and thoughtfully reflects a deep understanding of one another, something that cannot be undone by time or change. As conversations continue online and among fans, many find themselves reflecting on what this story represents beyond celebrity culture. It speaks to the reality that love is not static. It changes shape, intensity, and expression over the years. It reminds us that commitment does not always mean permanence in form, but rather integrity in how transitions are handled. There is strength in choosing peace over performance, and clarity over confusion. Looking ahead, both Meryl and Don appear grounded in who they are and where they are going. Their paths may no longer run side by side in the same way, but they remain connected by shared memories, family, and decades of mutual support. Their story does not close with loss, but with quiet understanding. And perhaps that is why this separation resonated so deeply. It wasn't shocking because it was dramatic. It was surprising because it was so human. It challenged the idea that long marriages must end in conflict to be real. It showed that endings can be thoughtful, respectful, and even loving in their own way. As this chapter settles into perspective, one thing remains clear. Meryl Streep's legacy extends far beyond her performances. It lives in the way she has navigated life with intention, empathy, and grace. And Don Gummer's presence, though quieter, has been equally meaningful. Together and now apart, their story continues to offer something rare in the public eye, an example of how change can be handled with dignity. What do you think this story says about long-term relationships and personal growth? Do you see it as an ending, or simply another chapter in two very full lives? Share your thoughts, and if you're enjoying this deeper look into the lives behind the headlines, stay tuned for more stories that go beyond the surface.